Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar called The Energy Transition in China and the Netherlands, Challenges and Solutions. My name is Fleur Edens, and it's a true pleasure today to host this webinar together with our partners on such an important topic. Before we officially kick off, I would like to inform you that we will have simultaneous translation available through the whole webinar. Please click on the globe in the bottom of your screen where you can pick the language, either Chinese or English, to enable the function of translation. Furthermore, we also have a Q&A available later. Please feel free to post your questions in either the chat and the Q&A through the whole presentations already. Please also feel free to ask your questions in Chinese if that works better for you. But before we officially really kick off, of course, we start with the opening speeches. And first of all, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Onne Jalink, Deputy Consul General at the Consulate General of the Kingdom of the Netherlands based in Shanghai. Ms. Jalink, may I give you the floor?
Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants and our esteemed co-organizers in both China and the Netherlands. A warm welcome to this webinar on the energy transition in China and the Netherlands. It's a pleasure to host and organize this webinar together with our partners, the Chinese Renewable Energy Industries Association, calling in from Beijing, the Shanghai New Energy Industry Association, and the Shanghai Science and Technology Exchange Center, both calling in from their office in Shanghai. The fight against climate change is accelerating and carbon neutrality goals are being set. Kindly allow me to briefly talk about the Dutch approach to achieving carbon neutrality. First of all, as an EU member state, we have committed to the 2050 goal of climate neutrality. By 2050, Europe should have an economy with net zero greenhouse gas emissions. In the Netherlands, we have translated this commitment.
这部法律让企业和公民对气候目标有了确定性。我们的目标是，到2030年，荷兰的温室气体排放量比1990年的水平减少49%。
2050. Furthermore, the Dutch government, business sectors, and civil society have signed the National Climate Agreement. The participating business sectors, such as electricity, industry, built environment, traffic, transport, and agriculture, agreed what needs to be done per sector and committed to the sector-specific targets. It shows that climate action is high on the agenda and the energy transition is a critical part hereof. In the Netherlands, the developments in the clean energy domain are going rapidly. For example, in the areas of offshore wind, hydrogen, and solar. I'm excited to witness the launch of the Dutch Clean Energy Guide during this event. This guide aims to introduce the Dutch clean energy sector to you. I will not talk too much about the details as it will officially be introduced later, but I would like to shortly highlight some clean energy developments in the Netherlands. Offshore wind has globally emerged as one of the drivers of the energy transition. Both China and the Netherlands are big players. Last year, China installed a total capacity of 3 gigawatts and the Netherlands followed with 1.5 gigawatts. The Netherlands is a highly valued R&D partner for international manufacturers and is known for its innovative solutions, such as, for example, installation and transportation. Also, in the area of solar, the Netherlands has a lot to offer. For instance, in the area of smart technologies. Smart technology is continuously needed to incorporate solar in the built environment, as well as to lower the production costs further. The Dutch solar sector can be seen as successful, and the Netherlands is among the top 3 countries in Europe in terms of annual installed capacity. The Netherlands also provides a supportive innovation policy and a dynamic ecosystem of companies and research institutes that work together to find solutions. Marine energy has a lot of potential for the future energy mix. For example, when looking at the amount of energy that can be generated by making use of tidal movements, waves, or osmotic power. Dutch companies are currently investing in possibilities to make marine energy technologies and solutions more economically feasible. Marine energy, solar energy, and offshore wind are some areas in the clean energy domain where the Dutch have a strong track record and expertise. In terms of doing business, the Dutch have an international outlook and are keen to work across borders and cultures. Many Dutch companies active in the clean energy domain are already active in China or are interested in doing so. I would like to thank our partners for co-organizing this event with us. I think this webinar will offer us a lot of new insights on the energy transitions, both in China and in the Netherlands, and will help us identify opportunities to further Dutch-Sino collaboration in the global fight against climate change. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very successful webinar.
Thank you, Oni, for your introduction. The second introduction word will be by Mr. Liu Guangshan, working for the Shanghai Science and Technology Exchange Center, one of our organizing partners of this webinar. The center focuses on promoting science and technology collaboration and exchanges. Mr. Guangshan, may I ask you to give your opening speech?
Oh. 尊敬的欧亚林副领事馆，李丹秘书长，还有我们朱会长，女士们、先生们，大家好，下午好。
Li Dan, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning.
很高兴通过线上这种方式与我们新老朋友见面。
It's my pleasure to meet old and new friends. On behalf of Shanghai Science and Technology Exchange Center, I'd like to extend my heartfelt welcome to all our guests. A heartfelt and warm greetings from our side. We were talking about how to cut the greenhouse emission in terms of the renewable energy development. Both China and the Netherlands, we advocate the green technology and the renewable energy. And in terms of the renewable energy, I think for both countries, we have a lot of things to share in terms of offshore wind power, hydrogen power. We have famous companies internationally. With our joint efforts, we hope we could put our efforts into practice, and also we can find the directions to work together and to have more potential in collaboration with each other. Well, in terms of the energy transition, this is the key time for China, and we are facing both challenges and opportunities. The year 2021 will be the beginning year for the fourth five-year plan. Energy transition is an important target. One of our biggest tasks is to expanding our renewable energy, and we need to meet carbon neutral, carbon peak targets. These are our new missions and tasks in this century. Renewable energy will play a more important role in the future. Shanghai Science and Technology Exchange Center work with China's Renewable Energy Industrial Association. We held the 5th International Solar PV Summit. We also organized and held the Hydrogen and Fuel Cells Engineering Summit. We can feel that renewable energy industries in China is in its comprehensive those equipments in all industries. For recent years, we've seen a lot of new products, new technologies. With new products and new technologies, we're able to have more innovation in renewable energy industries. We do believe with today's webinar, this webinar will play an important role in helping the exchange and the communication between China and the Netherlands in talking about the renewable energy. And also, we hope we will make our own contributions for the renewable energy industries. Last but not least, we wish this webinar a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Mr. Liu. After those two opening speeches, we will kick off with the first presentation given by Ms. Li Dan. Ms. Li Dan works for the Chinese Renewable Energy Industries Association, an association which focuses on promoting the adoption of renewable energy advanced technologies, serves as a bridge between stakeholders, and above all, also focuses on further commercializing renewable energy solutions. Ms. Li Dan is calling in from Beijing. And Ms. Li Dan, may I give you the floor to share with us insights and information about the clean energy domain in China? Please, to everyone participating in the audience, feel free to pose questions already if they come up during the presentation. Yes, yes, we can see it, yes.
大家能听到我说话吗？
Yes.
.各位好，能听到我说话吗？
我们听到您。
好，谢谢。好，尊敬的欧亚林女士，刘光顺主任，以及各位参会的嘉宾，大家下午好。我是来自可再生能源专委会的李丹，那很高兴能够有这次机会来与我们荷兰和中方的各位合作伙伴们一起来。
It is my pleasure to share with the energy transition in China. And I would like to talk about the current status and outlook of renewable energy development in China. First of all, I would like to brief you China's Renewable Energy Industry Association. Our organization was established in 2000, and against the background about the renewable energy in China, we show our concern on the renewable energy in China with over 20 years development. We focus on communicating between the government and the industries, and we play a role as a bridge for the Chinese companies and overseas companies. And also we play a role like a bridge to connect upstream and downstream. In the year 2017, we had another platform we called China Energy Research Institution. This institution focused on the research on the policies of renewable energy. We hope that we will offer our expertise so that we will be very supportive to our industry. Then I would like to review the characteristics of China renewable energy.
The development of renewable energy has actually been helpful to the restructuring of China's energy structure. Here I have shown the change of the energy structures in China in terms of the primary energy. We have seen that the coal has been reduced a lot from 2015 to 2020 to 56%. Meanwhile, we also see that there's lots of renewable energy that has been greatly increased starting from 2015 to 2020, and mainly coming from the wind and solar. So the increase of wind and solar is around 4% in the past 5 years. So in China, the non-petroleum energy has shown a rapid growth. By the end of 2020, the installed capacity of wind and installed capacity of solar has amounted to 281 million kilowatt and 253 million kilowatt respectively. And that has already completed the 13th five-year plan target. The various renewable energy has been growth in the past 5 or even 10 years, which has optimized the structures of China's power supply. So going forward, we have seen a chance that lots of primary energy will be converted into electricities as a secondary energy source. We also made a comparison between the end of 13th five-year plan as well as the end of 13th five-year plan. In terms of the installed capacity, you will see that the renewable energy has amounted to 40%, while in terms of the power source, the renewable energy has amounted to around 30%. If we compared the situation in the beginning and in the end of the 13th five-year plan. And among the renewable energies, solar and wind are the two largest growth capacity. The wind has grown rapidly ever since 2018. The solar has been growth since 2011. The water electricity has been growth relatively steady. As we mentioned previously, the wind and the solar has played a major role in terms of the growth of renewable energy. Starting from 2011, the renewable energy installed capacity is around 57 million kilowatt, and that has been increased to 540 million kilowatt, which is 10 times of demand. In terms of the electricity that are generated from the renewable sources, the number in 2011 it's around 100 billion kilowatt hours, and this has been grown to 856 billion kilowatt hours by 2020, which means the increase is around 8.5 times. And there's several features in terms of the growth of renewable energy. In the past few years, we all noticed that the consumption of the renewable energy has been a problem. However, with the support from the national government policies and provincial government policies, the wind curtailment and the solar curtailment has been reduced a lot. In terms of the wind power, the average utilization ratio is around 97%, which has been quite close to 100% consumption, while for the solar power, the average utilization ratio is around 98%. Meanwhile, in the industry, we are quite often mentioning a concept as grid parity. To be more exactly, the onshore wind and the PV power has entered into an age of great parity. But the offshore wind, as well as the solar thermal technology, has not yet entered into an area of great parity. In terms of the market of renewable energy, we have seen it's being expanded in the past 10 years. The accumulated investment size of renewable energy in the past 10 years has exceeded 5 trillion RMB. Well, in 2019, the renewable energy investment size is close to 500 billion RMB, which is the highest one in the world. Meanwhile, we have seen that with the investment on the R&Ds and also with the expansion of the market, the industry trend of the renewable energy is becoming more and more completed and comprehensive. So here I have shown a roadmap in terms of the growth of renewable energy. You will see that the whole industry was actually initiated or greatly promoted by the government or by the policy. That was including the target guidance from the government, the subsidy mechanism, as well as the consumption facilitation. For example, in the beginning, the solar are getting the subsidies in terms of the installed capacity. Later on, the solar power is getting subsidies in terms of based on the electricity that are actually being generated. So with this kind of change in terms of the policy guidance, you will see that the industry are getting more and more healthy. For the investors in this industry, based on the guidance of the policies, the investors are also trying to seek a more reasonable returns. With the subsidies change from the subsidy based on the installed capacity to the subsidy based on the output, that was actually guiding the investors to focus on their cost effectiveness and focus on the conversion ratio of the solar panels. Meanwhile, the government was coming out with different target. For example, there's a very specific target for different types of renewable energies in 13th five-year plan. And then in the 14th five-year plan, there's also a very specific target for each type of renewable energy. For the 13th five-year plan period, the growth of the renewable energy industry was quite rapid. And with this rapid growth, when we enter into the 14th five-year plan, the targets needs to be adjusted and to be more reasonable. In terms of the consumption of renewable power, as I mentioned previously, because there's lots of projects are put into production and in a very short period of time, and also lots of projects are being installed in the western and the northern part of China where the consumption demand is not high enough. Therefore, we have seen that there's a wind and solar curtailment, and it has become a big issue back to that time. However, in the past few years, the government has made lots of efforts to solve this issue either by increase the amount of renewable energy that are able to enter into the grid, or to provide a transfer channel for the renewable energy from the western and northern part of China to the coastal area of China. Of course, we still see the curtail issues right now. It takes a process or takes time to gradually solving the problem. Meanwhile, we also see that the government has made efforts on the supervision perspective. For example, the government will come out with alert. For example, in certain areas, there's issues regarding the curtail. So the government will publish alert that the investors should hold for a period of time, or the investors are being provided with privilege policies in the areas where the consumption is not an issue. So those types of observations and the supervisions are also helping the healthy growth of the industry. The growth of renewable energy has contributed to the reduction of the petroleum energy. We're all aware that the petroleum energy will generate the pollutions in terms of the water, the air, and the soil. The carbon emission is also a big issue being generated by the petroleum energy. Because the emission from the coal energy is very huge. Therefore, in order to reach the carbon pink target, the adoption of renewable energy is a must. And with the rapid growth of renewable energy in the past few years, it does works in terms of the reducing of carbon dioxide emission. So in China, we have a task of moving from petroleum energy to non-petroleum energy, from a low efficiency energy to high efficiency energy. And this was actually also improve the cost effectiveness of the economy. And with the upgradation of the energy structure, it also provide opportunities for the upgradation of relative industry. If we take a look at the hotspot of the investment community, we will see that the renewable energy and the relative technology industry or sectors has become a very hot spot. The use of the generation of renewable energy also help the job as well as the poverty relief. Because in the western and the northern part of the area where the economy is relatively poor, the adoption of renewable energy has provided a additional salary or economy sources for the local people and local industry. Now we can take a closer look at different types of energy. You can see the wind power has been developed very quickly and fast. From 2011 to 2020, China's installed wind power capacity rose steadily, and power generation continued to rise. By the end of 2020, China's cumulative installed wind power capacity reaches 280 million kilowatts, topping the global list for 11 consecutive years. And in terms of the manufacturing on the equipment of wind power,
those manufacturers who benefit from the fast development of this industry. Chinese companies have 5 of the top 10 global onshore wind turbine manufacturers, accounting for 38% of the global market share in 2019. So as you can see, the Chinese companies who held half of the top 10 global wind turbine manufacturers. In terms of the technology development, the whole industry chain of wind power in China has basically achieved. And as you can see, the industry is quite centralized, and those top companies are responsible for the manufacturing of the equipment. This is quite normal when we see the development of the industry. We can always find the leaders in one industry to lead the industry. The development of the technology of those leading companies provide the dynamic and activity for our industry. In terms of the equipment models for online and offline wind power, China has made achievement in the manufacturing of the online wind power and offline off-ground wind power. Those large wind turbine model technology development trend is obvious. Well, still towards the era of the large capacity offshore wind power supporting technology still need to be improved. And also for China, we need to learn from those international players. With 20 years development for the wind power, as we can see, the wind turbine manufacturing level for China has been greatly improved. And China has already among the leading manufacturers in the world. But in terms of the technology, besides the technology in making wind turbine equipment, we still need to improve technologies in other sides. And also, we need to have international collaboration and communication. I think in the wind turbine, there will be more potential for China and the Netherlands to cooperate with each other. And also, I would like to talk about the smart or the intelligence manufacturing of the wind turbine equipment. In terms of the smart manufacturing, China has applied a lot of smart technologies to promote the development of the industry, so the industry can be developed at a higher level. If we look at the equipment and manufacturing side, we know the industry has been gradually completed. We have established a globally competitive wind power industry chain system covering wind power development and construction, equipment manufacturing, technology research and development, testing and certification, and supporting services. And also, it has formed a production system, including blades, tower barrels, gearboxes, generators, pitch and young systems, hubs, and other components. And also, China has basically realized the localization manufacturing. But still, in the future, we can see there was the global international cooperation. And if we look at the localization rate of key components and the complete machine systems reaches over 95%. But it only shows us part of the progress we have made. But in terms of development of the renewable energy, we still embrace international cooperation. In the future, we will see a move towards units adapted to more types of wind resources conditions like low wind speed, deep offshore, floating, etc. These are the futures we can foresee. Well, if we look at the development, I would like to talk about the price cut for the onshore wind power. Unit prices fall from around 5,000 RMB per kilowatt in 2010 to around 3,100 kilowatt in 2020. But if you have the chance to read the bidding book, and you can see the price has been fallen into around 2,000 yuan per kilowatt. I think this is because the market somewhat have an impact on the price cut of the wind power. From 2021, China will promote a full parity from 2021, with electricity costs averaging around from 0.3 yuan per kilowatt hour and expected to fall to 0.25 yuan per million hours by 2025. Well, as the price has been cut, we have seen the fall of the initial investment in construction. Let's talk about offshore wind power. Offshore wind power has also witnessed a fast cut in cost, but there will be a big difference between onshore and offshore wind power, because if we see the ocean condition and ocean construction will have some impact on the development of the offshore wind power. That is why the initial investment of the offshore wind power is 2 times high than that of the onshore wind power. Under the current condition, in terms of the renewable energy subsidy, Chinese government now is making less subsidy. That is why the central government gives some suggestions to the local governments. The central government hope that the local governments are capable of developing offshore wind power, and offshore wind power will be the future task job for the local governments to realize energy transition, and the central government need local governments to support the transition of the energy. On this slide, I would like to talk about the development of the PV industry. In 2020, the country will have 48.2 million kilowatts of new PV installations, including 32.68 million kilowatts of centralized PV, which is around 2/3 of the PV installations, and 15.52 million kilowatts of distributed PV, 1/3 of the PV installations. For the recent years, we can see the fast development of the distributed PV. When China was promoting the development of the PV for such a long time, the distributed PV didn't got any progress. Back then, China's government was trying to find a solution to speed up the development of the distributed PV. So the government issued some policies with the support from the industry and the financial industry. The PV market has been expanded, and also China's government advocate innovation in distributed PV. That is why distributed PV in China has made a fast progress. By the end of 2020, 253 million kilowatt
1亿多千瓦的这个目标相比，我们实现了非常大的一个跨越。在2020年的这个光伏发电量的这个方面呢，我们看到2020年光伏发电的这个总量是达到了2600多亿千瓦时，与2015年的这个数量相比是增长了16.1%，这个增速呢也是一个保持了高速增长的这样一个状况。同时，基于我们之前这样的这个快速发展，中国一直以来也是保持了全球最大的这个光伏市场的这样的一个定位。这一块呢，其实是中国在实现我们说到的双循环，也就是说，原来中国的光伏在两头在外的这样的状况之下，那可能受到一些国际影响，我们就是开启了中国的这个国内的开发，也就是这张图上我们看到的，从13年左右开始，这样的一个高速增长的状态，其实是绝大多数的这个作用，应该说，还是得益于中国市场国内的市场，一个大量的这种起步。当然，目前，中国的这种光伏产业 在国内、国际两个市场方面都进行这种均衡的这样的着力吧。我们目前看到中国的光伏在海外市场的占比跟国内市场其实已经始终都处在一个高位的这样的增长状态。那在产业链方面呢，
Thank
技术
you
水平上，
so much for your
目前中
presentation.
国的光伏可以说已经
Do we are on a strict time
应该说
schedule? So
是
may I ask to give you one more minute to maybe wrap up? 还有一个你还有一个分钟？一个分钟？
好，不好意思啊，时间有点长。
没问题。
那我们看到这个中国的光伏产业，目前也都取得了这个非常高的这个质量的发展，就是在技术水平和产业水平上，发展都比较迅速。当然从价格方面呢，也呈现出来一个非常大的这种下降。那这块呢，也是给新能源作为主力能源提供了一个非常好的支撑。生物质方面呢，我们也在技术方面
for us to develop the renewable energy. Talk about the biomass energy. China has made some progress in biomass, but in the future, China still have some technology barriers in biomass and non-coal power generation. So for China, China put more energy of the biomass in power generation. In the future, we can see that the renewable energy will meet the decades like carbon peak and carbon neutral. The 14th five-year plan will set more aggressive industrial development targets, and the 14th five-year plan will play a window period, will play a role as a window period. And in the future, because of the resource limitation, we will still focus on the wind power and the solar power. And for the biomass and the hydropower will be developed in a very stable way. By the end of the 14th five-year plan, we hope that the renewable energy will account for over 50% by 2030. Our government also talk about the installation capacity of the wind power should have the over 12 billion kilowatt hours, but our real target is 16 billion kilowatt hours. But we need to think about the price. Price will give us some restriction and a limitation, but I do believe those challenges and those problems will be further solved in the development of our 14th five-year plan and other national plans. And also, we can see the future of China's renewable energy. China's new climate target will drive further development of new energy industry. And also, we can see the development of hydrogen, and the light, the wind and the PV will be used in the hydrogen power. And I think hydrogen power will be another good solution for us. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Ms. Li, for sharing with us about China's policies, regulations, frameworks, the potential for growth and the growth in especially solar and wind. And also talking about the challenges, as you mentioned, for example, the curtailment problem. Thanks a lot for sharing. Then we get to the second presentation. Of course, everyone is also calling in to hear about the developments in the Netherlands. And therefore, we have invited Mr. Remco de Boer, a publicist and researcher on the energy transition in the Netherlands. And we look forward to hear from him about the challenges and the solutions and the developments in the Netherlands.
Well, good morning, good afternoon. First, let me share my screen with you. Oh, this is not the first one, so you can see my presentation.
Yes, we can see it, yes.
Yeah, well, very quickly.
All good. Yes.
So, again, good morning, good afternoon. I'm very honored to be allowed to talk to you. It's an honor and a privilege, I should say, to talk to you today about the Dutch energy transition. I'm talking to you from Amsterdam, of course, the capital of the Netherlands. This picture is actually not my home, but my home looks quite like it. I live quite near there along one of the beautiful canals. And I think you've seen some of these pictures before. Pictures like these, with tulips, windmills, of course, our cheese, our wooden shoes. And I should say, ladies and gentlemen, that this is not actually an accurate depiction of the Netherlands. Because our windmills are much bigger. They're much, much bigger, much more modern, and also much more efficient. The tulips, it's still true, the cheese and the wooden shoes as well, but this is in fact an accurate picture. Wind energy at the moment in the Netherlands it accounts for about 23% of all our renewable energy, so about 1/4, and it's combined onshore and offshore. But the real champion still at the moment is biomass. 54%, so more than half of all our renewable energy comes from biomass, from agricultural residues, forestry, but also sewage, sludge, waste or household waste. In the Netherlands, we try not to waste anything, but to turn everything that looks like waste into energy. And we're quite successful at that. Of course, solar plays a very important role in the Netherlands energy system as well. At the moment, it's about 14%, so 14% of all
差不
our
多占到14%的比例。
has been exploding for the last couple of years. Solar parks as well, quite big ones, some small ones, as you can see here on this picture. And of course, thanks also to the ever lower prices of solar PV, especially also, of course, produced in China. In the last 5 years in the Netherlands, we have seen a 7-fold production, so 7 times more production of solar energy in just 5 years. So you can imagine how big solar is becoming in our country. If you look at the consumption of renewable energy, the percentage of the gross final consumption, it's at the moment 11%. And well, you might say that this is a lot. Maybe you could say that it's not a lot, but if you look at our history, there has been quite a sharp increase in the last couple of years. In fact, it's quite an incredible increase. You've seen in the year 2000, it was less than 2%. And it has been, well, there's an uptake from at about 2013 when we introduced the energy agreement. And what's really important to notice is that the most important reason for us to invest in renewable energy is, of course, the climate. And of course, we want cleaner air and clean energy, but it's also to do with the European Union, who put into law an obligation for the Netherlands to get to 14% in 2020. We didn't quite make it, as you can see. We're at 11% at the moment, but it gave an enormous push to our investment and building solar, wind, etc. parks. In fact, we did make it to 14% because of something called a statistical transfer with Denmark. They have more renewable energy than they're obliged to have. So a statistical transfer was made. So we paid them a couple of €100 million. I think it's about 200 million euros. And so we got to 14 and paid them 43% point. Of course, we're going to increase our efforts in the coming years, and I will show you in the next slide. Because if you look at this, 2020, we're at 11%, And in 2030, so that's only in 10 years' time, we will be at 25%. And when I say we will be at 25%, it's because this is all established and intended governmental policies. So we had elections a couple of months ago. There will be a new government, and we think that they will even increase it some more. But with the current policies and established policies already, we will be at 25%. A quarter of all the energy will be renewable in only 10 years' time. So I think this is quite something, especially when you consider that the Netherlands is quite small. I think even if you don't know a lot about our country, you perhaps know that it's quite small. As you can see, 300 kilometers by 190, just about, so quite small. And if you look at the population density, it's even more impressive, I think. We're with about 17.5 million people on an area, square kilometer of a bit more than 40,000. So that means about 421 people per square kilometer. And if you look at the average of the European Union, it's 108. And I looked up the one in China, it's not only 150. So you can imagine that in the Netherlands, it's quite busy. It's a bit crowded sometimes. And this means that, of course, as you know, for renewable energy, for wind and solar, you need quite some space. You need much more space than you need for a coal-fired power plant or a gas-fired power plant. So there is also some struggle. Some communities are opposed to wind and solar. And this was something that the government knew already last century. In the mid-1990s, they thought, well, we have to come up with something, we have to come up with a solution. And as you can see, the Netherlands, the area is quite small, a bit more than 40,000 kilometers, but we have something else. It's also ours, it's Dutch, it's our part of the North Sea. And as you can see, that's even bigger than our land surface. So you can imagine already in the last century, we came up with a plan. We have to go offshore, especially for offshore wind. Offshore solar is another story. I won't come to that in this presentation. But offshore wind already more than 20 years ago was an option. And the thing is, it's of course not without its challenges, not only the technical challenges. As you perhaps know, the Netherlands have become very good in building offshore farms, but this came with a lot of challenges in the beginning. First, beginning of this century, our government funded a demonstration park. It was followed by some commercial initiatives, but there was one big key problem. It was much too expensive. So there were subsidy schemes, and sometimes the new government did not subsidy or not as much. So it was sort of a stop and go policy thing. And as you know, this is not good for business. It's not good for developing a new industry, so to speak. And I will just show you the result. And after I show you the result, I will get back to how we got to this, well, amazing result. In 2013, so that's about 8 years ago, the cost of offshore wind was about 17 cents per kilowatt hours, euro cents per kilowatt hours. And the electricity price at that moment was about 4 cents. So you can imagine 4 times more expensive than electricity from, let's say, a coal-fired power plant or a gas-fired power plant. And the target the government stated was to lower this 17 cents to 10 cents in 10 years' time. But what was the surprise when they got their first tender? They tendered some offshore wind parks. I will come back to that in the next slide. Already these 40% reduction, that's from 17 to 10, 40% reduction was already made with the first tender to 7.27. And the second tender, also in 2016, already went to a bit more than 5 cents cost price to have an offshore wind park, offshore wind farm. And even 2 years later, there was a really big step, a world premiere on 19th of March 2018. Our Minister of Economic Affairs and Climate, he's the man in the middle, or to the left, I should say, perhaps, Mr. Wiebes announced the winner of the first subsidy-free offshore wind farm. The Germans had one before, well, an announcement, but when this one will be built, and this will be in about 1 to 2 years, then it's finished. It's under construction at the moment. It will be the first one in the world without any subsidy. So how did we do this? What was the Dutch solution? The government took the lead, not commercial companies. The government took control of all risk management. They made sure that the permits were there. They did all the research on the location at sea. They also made sure that the high voltage power lines were installed at sea. So companies had to do only one thing, and that was to compete who could have the lowest price. There were agreements with the market, like I said, 40% reduction. And for this, there would be a pipeline of projects. There would be many projects in the future. So companies were sure that there was a long-term stable government policy. There was a subsidy scheme tailored to the sector. That's really important, especially for the sector.
平稳，所以公司愿意去投资，做长线的收益安排。
But the final part is maybe most important. There was a lot of cooperation.
另外呢，我们也看到，对于每个行业来说，这些政府的补贴政策是需要做一定的调。
Always difficult to say where did these more than 40% cost reduction come from. It came from everything. It came from innovation, technical innovation. Procedures were bettered. So on all these parts, everybody did their best, all working together to get this done. This was quite incredible. So here you can see the offshore wind energy in megawatts, how it was from starting of this century. We got the first park, the demonstration park, in 2006. It was really small. It stayed really low in the first couple of years. Then 2016, 2 more came, and now starting from 2020 and onwards, you see a massive, well, almost an explosion of installed capacity in the next couple of years. And the 11.5 gigawatts we will have in 2030 are guaranteed. And now we're looking at, well, I think about 27.5 more gigawatts are being looked at, investigated, where to put them after that. So you can see a big explosion. But there's, of course, one challenge. There's a big challenge for offshore wind. And then I come to the next subject of my presentation. The big subject is, with every new offshore wind park you install, the business case, well, sort of deteriorates at some moments, because if the wind's blowing quite heavily and we don't have any place to put all this excess energy, well, where do you keep it? Do you shut down the wind turbines? Sometimes we have negative prices when you have to give money to get rid of your electricity. Storage is not yet fully developed. So this is really a problem. So to make the offshore wind case more profitable, we have to find a way to use more electricity. And then we get to the next part of a big challenge we have in the Netherlands, and also the next part of our solution. And that's reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and the role industry plays in this huge challenge. At the moment, the Netherlands are emitting 24.5% less greenhouse gas emissions than we did in 1990. 24.5. And as you can already see in this picture, industry, it's the light blue color on the bottom, has quite a big stake in this. Industry is quite a relatively big emitter of greenhouse gas emissions in the Netherlands. But just remember the 24.5 percentage reduction in just 30 years. And I should note that our gross domestic product, the GDP, has increased in the same time frame with about 185%. Our population grew with 16%. So this is something to notice. So how do we get to our target? Like the Deputy Council General said this morning, 49% is our national target at the moment. This might be increased by the new government, but this is the target at the moment, put in the climate law, the Dutch climate law. How do we get to 49%? Again, this is quite a challenge. But where our small country, the size of the country, is a problem in rolling out more wind farms, solar farms, etc., it's a big advantage when it comes to the greenhouse gas reduction in the industry. The challenge is, as it stands at the moment, to reduce by another 14.3 megatons in 2030, so in 10 years' time. And if you add it up with the reductions already being made, this will be a 60%, 60, it's quite an impressive number, 60% reduction in 2030 compared to 1990. So you can imagine a huge, huge challenge. And the Netherlands, well, you could say are blessed with a big chemical and industrial complex. Some say it's a curse, but it also provides with a lot of jobs. And the Netherlands are one of the big players when it comes to the industry. We have all sorts, as you perhaps know, refineries. We have metal industries like Tata Steel. We have quite a lot of them, and they're mostly top of their class. 4 of them are located and clustered. These companies are forming clusters in the Netherlands, located near big ports, like the one in Rotterdam or the one in Amsterdam. So the, let me get to this one. Another thing, an advantage the Netherlands have is we have many depleted gas fields, and they're quite near our shores. It's not that far away. Here you see a picture of Tata Steel near Amsterdam, and they have the project Atos at the moment, trying to develop CCS, carbon capture and storage, quite near the shore in a depleted gas field. In Rotterdam, we see a similar project, Porthos, and there are many more underway. So that is something also that the Netherlands have. And another very important thing, the word hydrogen has been spoken quite a lot already this afternoon and this morning. But what we're currently looking at, and you can also see at the picture of the Netherlands, you see the 5 industrial clusters. It's 1 in the north, in the south, and 3 at the coast. We're going to build a hydrogen backbone. We already have a very sophisticated natural gas infrastructure. Almost all households are connected to our national gas grid, the system, and transforming this into a hydrogen backbone is the next step to decarbonize, of course, the industry. You can also see 2 ships drawn in, because our harbors, like in the north, in Groningen and at Rotterdam, are also the ports for the import of hydrogen. We're going to make it ourselves. Look at the wind farms. There will be many more. And at the moment where we have excess green energy, also the production of green hydrogen will be 1 step further. So what exactly are we going to do? To sum up, We have 5 big industrial clusters. We're building already and going to build even more a lot of offshore wind, meaning green electricity. In 2030, already more than 70% of our electricity will be renewable, and it will go further from there. So already in 10 years, 70%, and we will go even further. We have quite a lot of depleted gas fields suited for carbon capture and storage. The first scheme has received subsidy for this for the next coming years. So this is on the brink of starting. So we can produce a lot of green hydrogen, but also blue hydrogen, meaning producing it still with natural gas, but storing the CO2 in this depleted gas field, so it won't vent, it won't go up in the air. Carbon neutral hydrogen, as we call it. We also have an excellent power and natural gas infrastructure, which we can and will transform into a hydrogen backbone. We have big world-class ports, as I mentioned before. And again, I can't stress this enough, the big feature the Netherlands have. We're quite small, but we know how to cooperate with each other, to share knowledge with each other, but also with other countries, of course, and to stimulate technical and procedural innovation with other countries, of course. And here I just put it in a picture to sum up. And you can also see how well the Netherlands are located with our neighbors, Germany, Belgium, France to the south. We're connected to Great Britain, of course, and Scandinavia in the north with our high voltage power network. So we're ideally located in the center of the northwest of Europe to make this transition work. Of course, there will be still a lot of challenges. I'm just telling it to you now how we hope it will work. It can work, but as you know, we have quite a vibrant democracy in the Netherlands, a lot of parties, and in these times of, well, how should I say, political polarization, to put it mildly, and populism, it's not always easy to come together politically. And politically, of course, is key. Politics is key. We have to have subsidy schemes for CCS, for carbon capture and storage, of course, to build electrolyzers, to produce hydrogen. This will not be easy, but everything is in place. We can decarbonize. And as we were a small, a prosperous and predominantly fossil country, we can decarbonize and become even more successful and prosperous, is my idea. And still, we still will have the tulips. We still will have the wind farms, the windmills, the old ones that served us for a couple of 100 years, and the new ones, as I've shown you, together with hydrogen, together with all the things I just mentioned. Learning from other countries, and hopefully helping other countries, working together with them to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. De Boer. As of now, in a few minutes, we will go to the Q&A. So please feel free to ask your questions. I already saw a few coming in either the chat or also in the Q&A. Yeah, I give you a few minutes to come up with any further questions if you have. And of course, both Ms. Lee and Mr. Remco De Boer, thank you so much for sharing. I think it's really interesting to hear about the energy transition developments in both countries. Common focus areas, common challenges, and it's great to see how in both countries we aim for further decarbonization, and yeah, you see also the focus shifting from solar and wind to also towards new areas as hydrogen that's being touched upon, and new innovative solutions. And thank you again for sharing both your presentations, which brings us to the Q&A now. The first question, Mr. De Boer and Mr. Lee, I will address you both because you both got some questions already. One question for you, Mr. De Boer. You haven't talked about nuclear energy. What's the Netherlands' opinion towards nuclear energy?
Well, this is a very good question. And when somebody says this is a very good question, usually it means it's quite a difficult one to answer. Because at the moment, with the current government, there are no initiatives to invest or to invest in nuclear energy. But the political debate is quite heated at the moment. Some parties are saying that without nuclear energy, we won't be able to tackle climate change. We need new nuclear installations in the Netherlands as well to be able to decarbonize fully, and to do it also for a reasonable price, because we talk a lot about getting the job done. But of course, it's not only getting the job done, it's also looking at costs and the way we're going to do this. So like I said, it's a heated debate at the moment. The government has issued sort of a study to look again, because we have done this for many years, dating back to the last century. We have been looking at it for quite a while, but still there is no real political majority to invest in new nuclear installations in the Netherlands.
Thank you for sharing. Then I see another question. I see the questions are addressed directly to us. Please also feel free to put them in the Q&A so everyone can see them. One question for you, Ms. Lee. I do see a question. You said that offshore wind has a lot of potential to further Dutch-Sino collaboration. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the specific areas where you see potential for Dutch companies in China, like areas for collaboration?
好，非常感谢。我想其实刚才我在谈到这个问题的时候，是在讲到海上风电环节的这个时候提到的。我想荷兰本身在海洋，包括运输啊，然后海洋工程方面，可能都积累了非常多的经验。那中国在这一部分恰恰可能还是比较弱的环节。另外在海上风电的这个高速发展的阶段，比如说广东其实出台了这个补贴政策，就是对海上风电的这种补贴，可能还会刺激一轮中国市场的这个发展。所以我们想这个市场可能会有一个非常高速的这个提升。那在这个过程中，其实我们无论是说在技术领域的合作呢，还是说我们在产业方面不同的这个这种合作上面，可能够有的这种机会可能都会比较多。所以我觉得还是在海上风电领域，特别是在海工，然后以及船舶运输啊各个领域，我们可以深入的探讨一下这样的这个合作。
Thank you. Then I see a question for Mr. De Boer again. Yes, what is the current status and future of floating solar in the Netherlands? What is the cost also compared to offshore wind? Floating solar.
Floating solar, yes. Well, like we took baby steps in the beginning of offshore wind, and like we took baby steps in all aspects of our energy transition, floating solar is still in the beginning of its development. And there are some small projects, not still offshore, on water, but we have a lot of water in the Netherlands, as you perhaps know. So we can put them anywhere. On sea, there are no project at the moment, still also quite expensive. And this is where we are working on currently, the technical development is also, of course, a big issue. To be honest, the exact cost, I'm not sure of at the moment, but I think like we saw with offshore wind, I told you at 17 cents per kilowatt hour, the cost price as it was in 2013. I'm usually not that impressed with high numbers or that it's too expensive, because usually something that's new is always compared to what we have too expensive. But you can see, and I think the offshore wind case in the Netherlands is a perfect case in point, that if you really put everything together, political will, subsidy scheme, you tap into the innovative powers of the marketplace and knowledge institutes, of course, you can reduce this price extremely fast. So like I said, still in the infant stage, floating solar, or especially offshore, but it's quite an interesting field, and we will be following this very closely.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, we had some camera issues, but we're back. When we talk about floating, Miss Lee, has China already developed a roadmap for floating wind energy? What's the current status of floating wind in China? Can you hear me, Miss Lee?
不好意思，我这边可能信号刚才不是很好。我想重复一下问题，是问中国是否发展漂浮式光伏，对吗？
Yes.
是的，中国其实也在推广这个漂浮式的光伏技术。因为其实从这个水面的这种体积利用，以及我们对这个有一些，比如说我们像采煤沉淀区的一些这个积水的这个领域，其实早就开始有水面光伏的这个一些项目的开发。那目前其实包括像沿海滩涂啊，我们看到，比如说山东、江苏，甚至应该说各个沿海省份在这部分可能都有一些这个应用，比如说雨光互补的项目，以及这个就是我们这个直接以漂浮式这种形式存在的这个光伏的开发利用，其实目前来说，规模还是在不断的增加的。这部分我想中国未来还是一个比较有潜力的市场。
Thank you so much. Question for Mr. De Boer again. What is the potential of rooftop solar for electricity generation in the Netherlands?
Well, quite big, I should say. And this is also perhaps one of the questions that we're not in the Netherlands moving very fast on floating solar. This has also to do with some pushback from communities who are protesting sometimes against large solar parks on land, or it will be the same floating on water. There's a big push, and there's also a big political issue to put, first of all, almost all, but we know we need more than just rooftops, but first to put it on rooftops. In residential areas, of course, and this already is a very big success. There's a subsidy scheme in place for many years, giving people a push to buy them. It's very profitable to do so. But we're now at a stage that the government is trying to push also to put it on rooftops of big buildings, distribution centers, etc. We have quite a big amount of rooftops still empty, still with no solar panels. So we see at the moment a very big push. And I think there's a lot more place to put solar panels. So when I told you that we have a 7-fold production in just 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised if we repeat this and even a bit more in the next 5 years, mainly, of course, also due to putting them on rooftops. So big potential, and next push in increasing our percentage of renewable energy.
Thank you. Talking about potential, I see here another question for you. What is the potential for offshore wind hydrogen production using electrolyzer platforms in the Netherlands?
Well, maybe I'm starting to repeat myself a bit, but also huge, huge potential.
Yeah.
This is the beauty, I think. As you see, we're only at 11%. We've made a breakthrough in offshore wind. We're going to make a breakthrough, is my opinion, in the production of hydrogen, in CCS, so blue hydrogen as well. So the potential is huge, and I think this is one of the interesting, challenging, and exciting things to witness at this moment in time. I'm not lost for big words. This is a really exciting time. So we see developments on almost every aspect of the energy transition. And there are big plans for, I think every industrial cluster in the Netherlands have their own big plans at the moment to install electrolyzers. But of course, it takes some time. And then I come back to the political issue. There are some political parties in the Netherlands who think it can be done in a moment's time and with snapping of the fingers, and this won't be possible. So we need time to build more offshore wind farms. It's going quite quick, and perhaps we can do it even quicker. So it all has to sort of work together. It's not a lot of use to build electrolyzers if we still have electricity mainly from fossil sources. So potential is huge again, but we also need a little bit of time. But what is 5 or 10 years if you look at the enormous task we have in reducing greenhouse gas emissions?
Thank you. Thank you. Another question for Ms. Lee. The Netherlands is developing some promising new energy from water technologies. What does China think of this? Ms. Lee, can you hear me? Ms. Lee?
Ms. Edens, the interpreter is asking if you can repeat the question.
Oh, yes, of course I will. The Netherlands has been developing some promising new energy from water technologies. What does China think of this? So new energy from water technologies. What's the current idea in China on those developments?
水电方面是这样的，应该说，其实中国的水电开发技术，也是在全球比较领先的，所以目前我们在整个的这个水电开发，这个过程中，我们应该是说，它跟新能源的这个开发还是有非常大区别的，因为水电呢，它涉及到的这个方方面面的因素可能会更多。 比如说这个淹没呀、移民呀，这些问题上下游之间的这种协同，所以中国对水电开发的这个问题还是比较慎重的。所以这也是为什么这么多年中国的水电开发其实是呈现出一个非常稳健的一个状态，在每年的这个推进，所以未来的话，可能中国的水电还是应该保持着一个比较稳步的这个发展状态。当然，我们觉得其实水电的这个开发领域里面，其中有一项就是抽水蓄能的这个潜力，可能目前还没有被完全开发出来。抽蓄的这个开发将对可再生能源的这种消纳，特别是对这种电力的这种调节作用，未来可能是我们需要更深层次去挖掘的这样的一个潜力，所以在这个方面，可能中国是需要再做一些这个工作的。当然，这个方面我觉得可能技术上是，不一定是存在特别大的问题，可能更多的是存在在机制上，或者是说，市场环境上的这样的这个问题。那大家也都了解，其实从中国的水电开发来讲，它发电的这个功能其实 并不是它的首要功能，它的首要功能可能是在水利，比如说灌溉啊这样的这个问题上，它优先要解决河流流域的这样的这个治理的这样的作用，所以。那发电的这项任务，可能我们在整个排序过程中，也许未来会有一个提升，但目前在水电的这个开发中，我们想可能还是会处在一个比较稳的一个时期。那个我们目前也在大力推动抽蓄的这个相关项目的一些推进。
Thank you. I think we've got time for 2 more questions. Does the Netherlands import or export electricity? A question for Mr. De Boer.
Well, we have been exporting power for quite some years, but it's an interesting question because we're at the brink of becoming an importer. Sorry, so we're going to see a change. And the thing is, what sort of electricity are we going to import? Will it be coal-fired power plants, or will it be from gas-fired power plants? Well, let me come back to it because I think I said it wrong. Because I will just checking. I don't want to give wrong information.
Okay,
well,
then
I have to correct myself. Sorry, we were an importing country. And we're going to export more. We're going to export more electricity.
Thank you. Then one last question, I think. I'm sorry, I see many more questions, but unfortunately we have to stick to our time schedule. One question for you, Ms. Lee. It's a bit broader, if I understand the question correct. It's about collaboration between China and Netherlands in general, and how can we learn from each other? Can you maybe elaborate a little bit how, from CREA's perspective, you collaborate with foreign countries and on this topic? Like, for example, in certain areas as planning, construction. I hope my question gets to you.
是这样的，我想在可再生能源领域，我觉得这个问题可能就会比较，一个是比较大，另外呢，就是说我们需要聚焦的点也会不太一样，因为可再生能源本身是一个我觉得很宽泛的概念，这里面包含了水、风、光、生物质，甚至是地热各个方面，其实这个领域还是比较广阔。我们还是觉得，肯定是会各自有各自的这样的优势。那未来其实这种可再生能源的这种国际合作，一定是一个怎么说呢？我觉得是一个常态，或者是说这是彼此提升效率的一个非常好的手段。中国的这个在能源的这个就是整个的这个发展的战略策略里面呢，习主席也提到过四个革命一个合作，其实他把这个国际合作是作为了一个非常非常重要的一个组成部分的，所以我想无论是技术层面的这个合作，还是产业方面的合作，其实未来都应该是有很大的这种空间的。那比如说电站设计啊，然后我刚才提到的一些这个海上的这个海工啊，然后包括运输啊，然后以及相应的比如说水电方面的，我觉得大家都可以去探索这方面的内容。这个地方没有一定之规，但是肯定是非常有空间有潜力的。好，谢谢。
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you for your presentations and for this Q&A. Yeah, we had some more questions, but unfortunately we didn't have the time. So we actually have to get on to our second part of this webinar, another really exciting part. And it kind of links before, if we talk about collaboration between countries, between China and the Netherlands, of course, an introduction of the developments and the sectors that the country is strong in is, of course, a good Yeah, it's a good starting point, but also good to give each other updates. And the Netherlands has produced a clean energy guide. We will launch the guide later. We will not tell you yet how we're going to do this. This is a little surprise. But before we do that, of course, we would like to give someone who produced the guide, Mr. Rogier Blokdijk, the space and the platform to actually introduce the guide. Like, what is the guide about? Mr. Blokdijk, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Fleur. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning for the Netherlands, good afternoon, and already maybe early evening for everybody in China. Before I share my presentation, I would like to shortly introduce myself. My name is Rogier Blokdijk, outside the Netherlands also known as Roger. I'm an international business development manager at FME, and FME is the trade association. The trade association for the technological industry in the Netherlands. We have around 2,200 members, so I represent the private sector in the Netherlands. But like a good custom that we have in the Netherlands is the private-public collaboration, and in this case, working with the Consulate General in Shanghai. So thank you for the floor, and thank you for letting me share some information about the clean energy sector in the Netherlands. Let's see if I can share my presentation. I hope this is, that everybody can see my screen now.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. As a trade association of FME, like I said, we have 2,200 members. Many of them actually work in the renewable energy sector. And it's actually twofold. We have a lot of organizations and companies that are providers of clean energy technologies. But we also represent a couple of organizations, or many organizations, that we call energy intensive users. For example, it's already mentioned, steel manufacturers or foundries that use a lot of energy. So we have both the supply and the demand side. And especially for the demand side, they see the urge for renewable and a sustainable future. As of tomorrow, we have to make it sustainable. But we're also used in the Netherlands to a very reliable energy system and a very affordable energy system. So now we're adding a third item to that it has to be sustainable as well. My role as an international business development manager is to support our member companies doing business in networks in the Netherlands, but also abroad. And this is actually the most exciting part of my job, I think, is to stimulate collaboration between the Netherlands, in this case, China, because I really believe by international collaboration, we can prosper as human beings, and especially in the field of clean energy, it helps making our earth more cleaner and greener. So very excited to be here today. The Clean Energy Guide. This is actually a public-private initiative that we did together with the Top Sector Energy and the enterprise agency NL in the Netherlands. And it gives you a very good overview of where the Netherlands stands in the field of clean energy. So like the presentation that we already saw from Mr. De Boer, it gives a clear and Dutch perspective on where we stand and where we're going. It also gives you a nice overview of the current trends that are taking place in the Netherlands. And this is in separate fields of renewable energy. It's actually twofold. We're looking at renewable energy production, but also energy technology that is necessary to make sure that you can have this clean energy production in your energy system. So when I talk production, we're really talking about wind, offshore wind. We're talking about solar. We're talking about bioenergy and marine energy. This can all be found in this guide. We're also talking about new gases or conversion, power to X, geothermal, but also energy efficiency, which is actually the cleanest energy that you can have by not using or producing it because you don't need it. And also heating and cooling solutions. as well as the future and smart grids. So it gives you a really nice overview, this guide. But then the first question that I always get is, Roger, I understand whether we need to go renewable. I understand whether we need new products and services. But can you give me an overview? What are the current products and offerings from the companies that you represent? So I used to have long presentations or Rolodex with all the contact details. But then together with Enterprise Agency NL, we decided to give it a comprehensive overview in the Clean Energy Guide. So it gives you a really nice overview of products and services that are available or in an innovation stage. And it also gives you a company detailed overview of company A. It offers these products or these solutions with all the contact details. And we really hope that this makes it easier for everyone to contact certain companies and to stimulate those international collaborations. I will give you an overview of a company profile, for example, that is included in the Clean Energy Guide. It has over 120 different company profiles, just like we see here from Redstack. It gives you a nice overview that Redstack is actually a company in the northern part of the Netherlands that is involved in marine energy or energy from water, like I said. The only thing that you need is salt water and fresh water, and by reverse electrodialysis, you can really produce clean green energy. And the big benefit actually of Redstack and what they offer is that in the production of clean energy, it's one of the solutions that is 24/7, instead of, for example, the disadvantage, of course, of solar is that you don't get a lot of production during the night. With wind, you're dependent on the wind energy. So in the total energy mix, this is a real nice solution actually for 24/7 production of clean energy. And then with each company profile, you can see actually the contact details of this company. So in this case, it's Mr. Peter Hack. I think he's in the call as well. The contact details, telephone numbers, email addresses. And there in the picture, you see actually a visitor center. So if you ever come to the Netherlands or visit the Netherlands, you can make an appointment to visit their visitor center and be explained how this technology works, which I think is also a perfect example of a solution that can be used in China. So this is where the one of the many company profiles that is included in the Clean Energy Guide. I also like to self-promote the Dutch and the working of the Dutch, but as a small nation in size, we're much smaller in size and in total inhabitants than, for example, of course, China. So sometimes we have to self-promote ourselves a little bit better for if a Chinese company or Chinese organizations. So why should I work with the Dutch? It's also part of these Clean Energy Guide. So we really like to focus on why you should work with the Dutch. Of course, it's because of our experience, our quality and reliability, the technical experience that we have and expertise, especially in the field of clean energy. Being a small nation, being very densely populated, having all these heavy industries also involved in the Netherlands, we're really working towards this reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy system. And we also work, of course, with the highest European and international standards. Because we are small, that's the second item, we have this huge international outlook. We work everywhere. I'm sometimes amazed where you can find Dutch companies. Of course, our experience with high-tech excellence, very good research institutes. We're really used to innovate and adapt our products and services to local market standards. Joint innovations, very open borders, a very international field of employees that our member companies also have here in the Netherlands. And it's a very easy access to specialized expertise. And I hope that the Clean Energy Guide will also make it easier for everyone to contact the right person at the right company with the products or services that you either have a question about, you want to buy the products or services, but also for that joint innovation or working together. like I said, we have this clean energy guide, which has detail about all the different energy productions and energy technologies that are available in Holland. But we also have some more specialized energy guides available. They're published and available in the same setup as the Clean Energy Guide. It's one on bioenergy, it's one on solar, and it's one on hydrogen. From the questions that I saw about, for example, floating solar, in the solar guide is a more deep dive section about floating solar and the floating solar projects that are already going on in the Netherlands. So the Clean Energy Guide in general gives a broad overview. The section guides give a more deep dive into the different subsectors. But today I would like to introduce to you the Clean Energy Guide, the total overview. It's available in English, but also there's a Chinese translation. And I really hope that this will stimulate our bilateral collaboration on innovation and on trade in order to make our world a little bit cleaner and greener. Back to you, Fleur.
Thank you, Mr. Blokdijk. I think that was a great ending, cleaner and greener. Before we actually launch the guide, of course, before you all will have access to it, we also would like to officially hand over a guide to our Chinese partners, the CREA, who we already, where Ms. Lee gave a presentation from. But we, of course, also want to hand over a guide to one of our local partners here in Shanghai, the Shanghai New Energy Industry Association. And before we hand over the guide, and we will launch it during this webinar, I quickly would like to ask Mr. Zhu Yuan Hao to quickly introduce yourself and to also introduce SNEA to us. Thank you.
这样开始各位好，我来自上海新能源行业协会。那么我们这个行业协会呢，主要的从事的这个专业领域还是在光伏这一块。那么那么就是我们国家最近制定了碳达峰和碳中和的目标。
China has recently made a target for carbon peak and carbon neutral. I'd like to talk about this double carbon target. This is also my today's presentation theme.
按下面的是吧？光伏这个产业啊，我们这个
Talk about the photovoltaic industry. Recent years, we have witnessed the rapid development of PV industry in China.
光伏这产业啊，就是这几年我们新能源行业协会呢，见证了
Well, for our industry association, we have witnessed the whole process of the development of photovoltaic industry in China. If we wish to reach the target of carbon peak, several years ago, if we talked about carbon peak, we would be hesitate to talk about to reach carbon peak target. But since the price of the PV has dropped, so I think we're able to say that we can meet the carbon peak target.
先介绍一下这个，我们现在， 不用。啊。好，对这个。好的。
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, is everything okay? Do you need any help from our side?
可以的。好。
好。
这样就是我们
跟我说上下游行。只管你说下一页。那就直接说吧。下一页。
If we have some issues with the PowerPoint, I would suggest to maybe just introduce yourself and introduce the Shanghai New Energy Industry Association to everyone without the PowerPoint, if that works better.
好的。我总的来介绍一下我们行业协会跟那个
I will briefly introduce about our association and also how we are linked with the carbon pink and carbon neutral target. The development of a solar, or to be more exact, the PV industry has played an important role in achieving the 2 carbon target. Around a decade ago, the unit price generated by the PV is around 6 RMB per kilowatt hour. However, today the price has been down to 0.4 RMB, that is 14 cents RMB per kilowatt hour, which is already close to the coal power generated by coal. And also in the certain areas where the solar is quite adequate, the electricity price could be even lower. Previously, the PV only account to 0.2 or 3% of the total energy. By 2060, the percentage will be much higher. We had a target previously that by 2020, the solar energy could amount to around 50% of the total renewable energy. We have seen that there's lots of companies who has becoming outstanding in the industry. The silicon starting from the silicon to the wafer to the cell and to panel, the whole industry has amount to 70% of the total industry in the world. In terms of the price, we would be achieving great parity this year. So going next, how the solar can contribute to the carbon pink and carbon neutral would be rely on the technology of storage of electricity. One could be the water storage, the other could be chemical storage, or a transfer through the internet, or the transfer through a local network. So going forward, we will be moving towards a multi-energy integration system where different energy can complement each other, because some energy are continuous while some energy are not.
Is everything okay?
OK。
Okay. Are you finished?
I finished.
Okay, thank you so much for your presentation and for introducing the Shanghai New Energy Industry. Oh yeah, can you please stop sharing your screen? Thank you so much again for introducing the Shanghai New Energy Industries Association. And of course, thanks to, for introducing yourself and what the association is doing. And now, of course, the moment is there. We're going to officially launch, or in Chinese translated, Clean Energy Guide. I would like to ask all the panelists to switch on their camera so we can all see each other when this moment happens. So we digitally hand over the guide to our counterparts here in China, and of course also the Dutch parties are involved. We will launch the guide shortly. I would like to ask you all to grab your mobile phone, so you can scan the QR code with either your camera or with your WeChat for our Chinese audience. This is also after the video, the webinar has ended. I thank you so much for joining and for attending this webinar. If you have any questions or follow up, my email address will be shown later. But first of all, we would like to hereby introduce you and hand over to you the Dutch Clean Energy Guide. Thank you all for joining again. We will switch off our camera, also all the panelists. Thanks again, and enjoy the Clean Energy Guide, and wishing you all a very good day ahead.
让我
Thank
讲
you.
一句话，